Unlock the secrets, learn new tactics, and build a winning strategy to win the aging game. Welcome to the Aging Game with Bruce and Susan.
All right. Welcome to episode 9, Decoding the Puzzle of Long-Term Care Insurance. This is going to be an exciting one. Today, I'm really happy. We have a good friend of both of ours, Mitchell Dannenberg, who is the owner of LTCi Marketplace. So he will be joining us in a little bit to dive into all things long-term care insurance. But before we bring him on, how have you been?
Doing great. Happy to be here. Just got back from a little vacation down in the Keys.
Ooh.
And we did something fun this week. We went to the Greenway of Naples. I'm not sure if you've ever done that. And it connects from like Baker's Park over there off of Golden Gate Boulevard, and took our dogs. And so it's a really cool thing to do.
All right, I'm gonna write that down.
The Greenway.
All right, that sounds great. I gotta say, since our last episode with Marla, she really inspired me to go home and kind of tackle a couple things. So, I've been kind of going through some rooms and tackling things, piece by piece, and I'm enjoying that, and I'm enjoying taking her advice. And I did take that ladder from my mom, so
Good.
Thank you, Marla.
Good. So I have a story to share about long-term care insurance. So I had a client lived in Bonita Bay, and they had this policy, what we would call a unicorn policy. So unique that you can never get a policy like this anymore. And this guy, was sort of old school. He didn't know Marla then, so he didn't have things on auto payment, and so. He was old school where he had to write a check every time, his insurance came due. And unfortunately, this gentleman hit his head. He was, going to the restroom, and he hit his head on the sink, and his insurance lapsed. And he needed to go into, a memory care place, and he didn't have any insurance. And so, he had this great long-term care policy that lapsed. And so it was a tragic thing that occurred, and there wasn't anything you can do about it. So the lesson to all that is, auto pay, get these things in auto pay, because things happen, and things happen unexpectedly and without notice.
Wow, that's sad, but we do hear that those things happen. It's pretty scary. So before we get going, I love stats. I love to bring numbers into this. So I was reading an article prepping for this episode. It was called Older Americans' Economic Security. And it said, among adults 65 and older, only 12.4%, which is roughly 4 million people, have a long-term care insurance plan. And I guess I just thought that number was really low. And then I was kind of diving back in prior years, and that number is only up 2% from 2020. So I'm interested to kind of get Mitchell's take on that and see, this is, I think it's a great thing to have. I certainly had never thought about it, but I had explored that, a few years back and procured a policy for myself. But I'm surprised people aren't adding this to their aging journey.
I think people, it kind of goes back to denial.
Yeah.
And people think, and it's not a sexy topic.
No.
It's kind of like buying tires for your car. It's not a fun thing. Insurance isn't fun, but it's needed. And if you can protect yourself financially against the high cost of care, you should definitely consider it.
Yeah. Well, Mitchell makes it fun, so I'm excited to bring him in. But I know you've got a great quote for us today.
I do. So this is from Charles Buxton, and he says, in life, as in chess, forethought wins. So meaning looking ahead and being prepared is important. Having a long-term care policy can be a great asset in the aging game. So thinking forward instead of being reactive is important.
Wow, really tying in all those themes of those prior episodes there.
That's right.
Well done. All right, well, let's take a quick break and we'll bring Mitchell in.
Okay.
When experience matters the most, Senior Housing Solutions uses over 30 years of industry knowledge to provide expert advice for those considering a move to a senior living community. We are the matchmakers of senior housing. Call today at 239-595-0207 for your free consultation.
Welcome to the Gambit. Today, we are going to unpack everything long-term care insurance. We are excited to have with us our local insurance expert, Mitchell Dannenberg. So, Bruce, tell us about Mitchell.
Well, welcome, Mitchell. Mitchell is
Thank
a
you.
good friend of ours, and I refer Mitchell to many of my clients who have long-term care insurance questions and needs. So it's great to have Mitchell here, and we're going to unpack this, and you're going to share a lot about long-term care. So Mitchell is an insurance professional who owns LTCi Marketplace, which is a company that creates insurance solutions for his clients. His boutique approach and candid demeanor, which we'll all get to know, is really what sets him apart from all others. You've never met an insurance guy like Mitchell. So, Mitchell, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Susan. And I look forward to sharing some insight on our encounters, both with different insurance designs and with the many clients we've worked with over the years.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into this. I love to ask everybody the same question as we start out, just to get some little insight into your brain. So, what is something that you know today about long-term care insurance and seniors that you wish you knew earlier in your career or your life?
So, what I would share is how important it is to have a plan. It isn't so much a plan. It isn't so much about long-term care insurance or life insurance or disability coverage. It's about having a plan if the unlikely were to happen. And it is unlikely. And that's why we can buy insurance. However, at the same time, as we age, upwards of 60 to 70% of individuals will require some kind of long-term care just by virtue of reaching age 65.
So before you had come in our opening part, every time I always share some stats to kind of set the tone of the episode. And I was reading a study and it said that only 12.4% of seniors have a long-term care insurance policy. And that number was only up 2% since 2020. And I thought that was just such a crazy low number. What do you?
Well, here's what I'll share. It is a low number because most people don't accept that we're going to age. Most people, even when they're 80, are like, I'm doing fine. I'm playing tennis twice a week. I'm golfing. I'm bulletproof. Nothing's going to happen to me. And then something does happen.
Yeah.
And they or those that they've invited into their life are unprepared and ill-prepared because they didn't want to think ahead as it relates to healthcare. They've thought ahead about everything else in their life. Okay? What kind of career do I want? What kind of spouse do I want? Do we want children? Do we want a pet? Where do we want to live? But for some reason, there is this block that not only will we be able to take care of one another when we're 85 or 90, but very often, it's not going to happen to me. Or the kids will take care of us. All right? And it's having a plan. It's just, so that's what's important.
And these people need to listen to our podcast.
Yes, they do.
So, I know, and I borrowed this quote from you, and which I think is so great, is that what you say is that the older people get, the more invincible they think they become. But it's the complete opposite to that. So it's people, denial is a dangerous game.
Without question. I mean, if I might elaborate a little bit, I mean, here's what happens. We're born, we get into our teens, our early 20s. We do crazy stuff. It's part of just growing up. All right. And we're bulletproof. And then we get into our 30s, 40s. We maybe have a significant other, get married, have some kids. We get more responsible. And we begin to think about protecting ourselves. And then what happens is by the time we're in our 40s, we've lived long enough to get those phone calls. Gee, did you hear about so-and-so? Or did you know? And it's always like, wow, I just played tennis with them 2 days ago. All right. But what happens is by the time we get into our 60s, we become bulletproof again. It's like there's that middle range where from about 30 to 60 where we go, yeah, probably ought to look at some insurance. And then for, just in case. But then there's the, don't need it. And it isn't that we don't need it, we're unwilling to accept reality.
That you might need it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Good point, Bruce.
So let's just kind of take a step back and help our listeners understand what is long-term care insurance, just like real basic.
All right. So long-term care insurance is an ability to, Ben, stop. Bruce, long-term care insurance provides the opportunity to create an additional pool of resources outside of what we already have gathered and earned and invested and saved, an investment portfolio, equity in our home, whatever it might be. Long-term care insurance gives us another bucket of money to reach into if we were to need care. And needing care can happen at any age, not just when we're 70, 80, 90. Okay. I've had friends and clients who needed care in their 30s due to an auto accident, an illness. And then they recover and life goes on. But I've never had a client who's ever said, oh, wait, don't spend the 401k to get me better. Right. It's like we empty the 401k to get ourselves back to where we need to be. It's just like when we purchase a home. The bank requires insurance to protect their mortgage. All right. When we buy a car, we have to have insurance. All right. We don't wait till the house is paid off to insure it. We shouldn't wait to get long-term care insurance or have a plan of care until some mythical point.
And as I said earlier, buying insurance is not sexy. It's like buying tires for your car.
We make it sexy.
Okay.
Well, we know.
We make it fun.
All right, good.
All right.
Put your hat on.
Yeah. Hey. So, no, I think one of the things that just separates us is we take the approach that every solution is unique. What one person is seeking is different than another. And the reality is you don't need insurance if you don't mind having your life upended. And it isn't just the upending financially. It is the upending, the emotional upheaval of all of a sudden being confronted with, I had no idea that care was going to run me 8, 10, 12,000 or more per month.
Right.
I had no idea that I might need care for 3, 4, or 5 years. And wait, my husband's unable to care for me, or my wife is unable to care for me. And the kids are uninvolved. Not that they don't love you, but they live out of town. We don't have this nuclear family anymore where everyone lives within 30 minutes of one another. People are spread out across the country and busy with their own lives.
Good point.
It is a good point. We see that every day. How many people, their adult children are in another town, another state. They're busy with their lives. Something goes wrong and, they're left here without that support.
Yeah. Or, my son said he would care for me.
Right.
All right. Until you actually make that phone call and go, I need your help. Oh, well, Mom, I'm busy. Oh, wait, Mom, I had a setback with my business. I'm unemployed. I don't have the resources.
Right. Or you have kids you're putting through college or school or whatnot, or life, you're busy. The need is hard.
Yeah.
It's nice in theory. I say all the time to my mom, I'll take care of you. What I mean by that is I'm going to give you great home care. But I'm sure that the normal person, when they say it, they think, oh, yeah, I'm going to take care of you, whatever that looks like. But it's different when that call comes. And what is that? I need to move in
Well,
with
and
you. I
there's
need you to cook for me. I need you to
well,
whatever.
well, there's two parts to that. One is the actual caring, and the other piece of this is how is that care going to be paid for? And so I think that's where having a
Yeah,
solid long-term care policy to answer that question about, okay, mom, dad needs care. Now we have this policy to pay for that care.
definitely.
Right. And so Bruce, you're exactly right. I mean, I came from a family, look, my grandmother lived with us. Everyone when I was growing up lived within an hour of us. But again, now we're dispersed across the country. All four of my grandparents needed long-term care. This is one of the things that drove me into this business. Okay. All four of my grandparents needed care. There was not a plan, except, well, we'll spend what we've got. All right. My dad died prematurely after an 18-month illness. All right. And my parents just built a very expensive home, not by today's standards, but in 1985, I think they spent, $600,000 on a place. All right. And no mortgage insurance. Okay. My brother's wife got MS at 51.
Mm,
Wasn't supposed to happen,
right.
but it does.
Does. What do you think? I know we've talked, a little bit about this, but what would you say are like the top key benefits of having a long-term care insurance?
It's the number one benefit is I have options. I can make decisions. No one's going to make these, or I'm able to make decisions in concert with loved ones, with those people I've invited into my life. All right. I'm not having to pay capital gains to empty an investment portfolio. I'm not having to worry about this when the market is down 30% or 40% like it was in 2007. And we might have another 2007, who knows? But the beauty of having a plan as to where that money is going to come from, and actually having a bucket filled with money to spend, just takes a lot of pressure off of individuals.
So I have a two-part question. So the first part is that you have this bucket of long-term care insurance money. So how does someone access that? How does that work?
So the first step is working with a Bright Star, okay, to say, hey, wait, I need care. And then having folks at Bright Star design a plan of care. All right. Now, as part of this, we're going to need to fill out an application for benefits with that insurance company, whether it's standalone long-term care, whether it is a life insurance policy, which is very popular now with a spend down rider for care, but we're going to need to access those benefits. And what happens is we pick up the phone, we call an insurance company. And as part of this, let me share this. Many people live in denial that they need help. We meet people and they're like,
Welcome to my world.
we meet people and Mitchell, we were referred to you. Folks said we ought to chat with you. Sometimes these referrals come through you, Bruce. Sometimes they come through you, Susan. And we're first saying, look, here's how your policy works. That's very critical. Understanding what the triggers are. They're based on activities of daily living. Okay. These would be bathing, continence, dressing, eating, toileting, transferring. A cognitive impairment is an automatic trigger. All right. And then what happens is we arrange for, and many companies are doing this virtually now through FaceTime, Microsoft Teams. I prefer a face-to-face, real live person interview. And then that interviewer who works for the insurance company, directly or indirectly, typically insurance companies don't keep these folks on staff any longer. they contract with companies like Care Scout or others. All right. And it's educating folks to go, wait, and I don't mean to be too graphic, but have you fallen? Do you have trouble getting to the bathroom when
Mhm.
you need to? Can you get yourself up and down off of the toilet? Etc. Well, sometimes. And it's getting folks to realize the help they need.
I know recently we have a mutual client that was trying to get on open a claim. And, that was one of the challenges, was navigating that part of it. And I think the client and their spouse in denial, they want, where are you needing assistance? No, I don't need assistance. No, I don't need. But they do. How do you suggest navigating that type of conversation when you do have to identify that there's been a change, something needs to occur, but yet when they have these interviews, some of them, they're not answering the question that's going to benefit them, whether that's pride or denial or something.
Susan, it's typically a variety of factors, pride and denial. As I say to my clients, well, this is not a time to be a hero, okay, or a heroine. This is your opportunity. You've paid these premiums.
Yeah.
This is your opportunity to basically cash a lottery ticket that you do not want to win, but you've won it. So be happy that you've got the opportunity to cash that check. And, sometimes people are wearing protective undergarments, but they don't want to talk about that.
But you got money on the table. Why not spend it?
Why do you want it? Is the insurance company going to send you a thank you note?
No.
No. All right. If anything, they're going to go out to happy hour on your dime instead of you being able to have your own happy hour.
So I want to ask my second part of my question.
Yeah, sorry.
I know, because we could talk a lot on this subject. So, and you briefly touched on it, but I know that newer long-term care policies now have a life insurance rider. So can you talk a little bit more, can you talk about what that looks like? This long-term care, because before, years ago, it was just basically a long-term care policy that would help pay for some care. But now they have this new product out there with a rider, with a life insurance.
And so historically, 10, 15 years ago, there were 30 companies writing long-term care, and you could list them. Okay. But what happened is, and I don't mean to disparage my industry, but sometimes they do deserve a kick in the butt. Okay. Is they found out they were paying claims, and insurance companies are great at collecting premiums. But when it comes time to pay claims,
God forbid they have to pay.
Hang on. We'll get back to you. Okay. So as a result, not only were there a lot of rate increases because they underpriced conventional long-term care policies, but now there's only one company writing. There might be two or three, but one that I would bring clients to that is writing conventional standalone long-term care. All right. The reality is, clients that I work with are saying, "Oh, Mitchell, I know that we need help with paying if we have a need for care, whether we can afford to self-fund or not. I want assistance." So what the insurance industry responded actually very smartly. And Bruce, as you alluded to, there are now life insurance policies. So someone goes out and purchases a $500,000 death benefit. All right. And they can potentially spend that down. It's either reimbursement, which means they're coming to a Bright Star for care through an agency. All right. And then that agency's invoices every month are paid and come off of the death benefit. Or rather than a reimbursement policy, you have an indemnity policy where on a monthly basis, the money is just deposited into your checking account and you can spend it however you like. All right. So now, very often in that scenario, spouses or kids are helping care for that individual. And in other times, it's a combination of, wait, we've got this extra money. Let's go buy a new car. Let's take a cruise. No one cares where the money is. With an indemnity policy, it's your money to spend.
That's your bucket.
Yeah.
So good.
Interesting
Yes.
stuff. So along this kind of topic here of, buying insurance, at what age do you think someone should really consider buying a policy like this? And is there ever a point of no return where you're too old to buy a policy?
So here's what I would share with you. We begin saving for retirement if we're smart, okay? Very young, maybe in our 20s, putting money aside. I would say to you, and people say, oh, he has a bias. He's an insurance guy. Of course, he thinks you ought to do this when you're young. But the reality is, I'm designing a long-term care plan for a woman who's 33.
Wow.
All right. Because she says, I know, my dad got sick and mom and dad, I want to protect myself. All right. What I say to folks is, I look at insurance as if you can envision this visual of a valley where you've got, you're on, there's 2 level planes, but there's this valley in between. And have you ever tried to walk downhill and you get to the floor of the valley and then you have to walk uphill to go the other side? So picture one side of the valley is your income earning years. And it's kind of hard to walk downhill. It's kind of a challenge to say, I want to put money aside for some time in the future that I won't even see. And then we get to that retirement point, and now we're climbing uphill, which is also challenging. And now our challenge is not putting money aside. It's how quickly do we spend it and where do we spend it? And instead, I like to draw a line across the top of that valley, which is a bridge. You have a choice. You can walk down and walk up, or you can walk straight from one side of the valley to the other on this bridge, and that bridge is insurance.
So it's a great analogy.
That
Very,
really-
very good.
Really is.
So, and Susan touched on it a little bit more about, is there a point where, someone's too old to get hold on. So is someone too old, or if someone has a pre-existing condition, is this long-term care insurance just out of the question?
Here's what I'm going to tell you. It's never out of the question. Well, I shouldn't say never. It's rarely out of the question. It can be out of the question because of medications, because of health history, because of age. But we have clients who are in their 80s that just never planned but have resources. And they're saying, wait, Mitchell, can we get an annuity that might pay us, because of our age, 10, 12, 14%? And we can use, and it'll pay for our lifetime. It's not indexed. I don't believe in any kind of variable or index type solutions. Whatever we offer is guaranteed. It's the only way to design a plan. It's got to be there. But these are folks that, if we could create a bucket of money that might give us $100,000 a year toward care, why not? Okay. So, we've written life policies on folks that are in their mid 70s. Okay. We've written long-term care policies on folks that are in their mid 70s, even into their early 80s. It's a function of, as I say, if someone says something is too, the cost of this policy is too much, Mitch, I'm not going to spend $10,000 or $12,000 or $15,000 a year on this for myself, and then I have to do this for my husband too. All right. Well, how would you feel spending that same amount of money every month?
Right.
All right. And sadly, and I don't mean to disparage investment advisors, but investment advisors jump on top of their horse and are like, oh, hey, let's run off and gallop away. So one of the issues is I have had clients that will say, well, Mitchell, let me talk to my investment advisor about this expenditure. I think we need something. And most of my clients do not insure the entire cost of care. They're glad to contribute something from their own resources that they've gathered. They just don't want to be potentially responsible or on the hook for all of the cost of care. Right? But sometimes I've come across investment advisors that are like, well, based on our projections, with our Monte Carlo scenarios, based upon what you have, you'll be able to self-fund. Okay? Because investment advisors very often by nature are like, you're doing fine. And forgive me, but they don't want to see money coming out of their assets that they're managing because they get paid a management fee. Versus, wait, if I help my clients protect themselves, then more of their bucket that they have with me is going to be protected. I had clients who wanted to move into a buy-in senior living community that was going to cost them about $600,000 for the unit they wanted. They had about $1.2 million. And I said, terrific, go talk to your investment advisor if you would like. All right. I don't necessarily know if that's a good idea, but I'm not familiar with your financial situation and what your monthly expenses are and desires for legacies. And the financial advisor said, oh, that's not a good idea. You should move into a rental community. But one of the two was uninsurable, did not have long-term care insurance. The other did.
I see it all the time.
And
I see it all the time, unfortunately.
So
somebody can self-insure is basically what you were saying, is that someone can self-insure. They can develop through an annuity type of program that you can help them with.
Yeah. I mean, although what I want to understand is what people want to protect, Bruce. Okay. Is it important to leave the kids something? Is it important to leave a charity something? Is it important to make sure that my husband or wife have enough to live a long life? Because most of us today are going to live into our early 90s. So is your money going to last that long? And the other thing I say, by having a plan, most importantly, you're more likely to preserve relationships with your spouse, your kids. I've got one client right now I'm working with whose husband has Alzheimer's. No plan for care, but she can't go anywhere without him. She's had to put geotags on his clothing. So if she goes to the grocery store and runs to the restroom, she uses her phone to find out where he is in the grocery store, even though she says, stay here.
That's sad.
Okay. And there's no plan for care. No one ever thought about it.
Good information.
I think Mitchell should be our third co-host. I mean, you're preaching, everything that we say, which is people don't have a plan. They don't talk about this, and they need to, and they should. And it's remarkable to hear these stories that obviously we all see every day in our industries of just people don't plan for this, but you plan for everything else. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, and even let's say someone truly has the resources to self-fund, which I will tell you, and I don't mean to be cavalier. I think if you have less than $5 million, you need to have some kind of insurance. Okay? And because we just don't know. And if you have that or more, my thought is, what do you do? You're probably gifting to your kids or grandkids. This is not on their radar.
Right.
But buy your kids who are in their 40s or 50s a long-term care policy.
So,
buy your grandchildren a long-term care policy.
So the reality is that if somebody needed long-term care today in Southwest Florida, they're looking at paying $500-$600 a day. So that's $18,000 a month, which is about $250,000 a year.
Yes.
And that, to be able to sustain that over a period of time wipes people out.
Yes.
Yeah.
It absolutely can.
And that's in today's dollars.
Yeah.
So as we're talking about people who might be listening and might be 40 years old or 50 years old, well, we're talking about today's dollars. What's care going to be like 20 years from now?
Great point. And I think too, our listeners range from other professionals, adult children, people in our industry, in other industries, obviously older adults. And I think, it gets me thinking about, I wonder how many people in our industry, in the senior industry themselves have a policy like this. Like, we preach it, we see the need for it, we see what happens, but I wonder if the young adults out there are protecting themselves.
Well, the other thing is that it's like there's this statistic, and I wish I could tell you where it came from, but that 50% of all trust and estates attorneys don't have a will.
Oh, wow. Yeah. But like
Okay, we're always too busy taking care of everybody else rather than
Yeah.
ourselves.
what is it? Those that teach can't, those that can do, or something. Like the teacher doesn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think there's probably a lot of people that preach all the stuff to put in place, but don't actively do it
It's just,
themselves.
well, I'll do it later. I'll do
Right.
it tomorrow. I know I need this. Mitchell, Bruce, Susan,
Right.
thank you. But
I just I have a lady that I work with, and she's not in our industry. We work together on an unrelated project, and talking to her about the podcast, different things, and she's like, "Yeah, this is not a sexy topic." And I was like, "Yeah, but like one day, like it's inevitable. One day you're gonna get a call, something happened, right?" And then it did, and I feel so bad, but I'm kind of like, I nudged you in the direction of where to help, and you didn't, and now you're in that crisis mode that I tried to help you prevent. So I hope that people listen and do start to have the conversation earlier and younger, and understand that there are complex things like long-term insurance. But before I started working at Brightstar, and obviously, before I knew you, I didn't even know about this. So I've learned a lot in my professional career about this. So I think there's people out there that are not in this profession that don't know that this exists until they have that need themselves. Mom and dad, something happened, or they meet someone like you to teach them. But
what we are a big proponent of, because I'm never going. If someone says, Mitchell, we're just going to sell fun, I'm not going to sit there and pull out a laptop and run spreadsheets for them. It's like, fine,
yeah,
okay, but have you thought about maybe insuring your kids or your in-laws, your parents? Who do they have this wherewithal? Because if you're going to sell fun, whatever this need is, have you thought about others? Because there's always spoken and unspoken aspects of money in every relationship. And all of a sudden, that happy marriage becomes less happy when all of a sudden, well, you're helping your folks to the tune, honey, I love you, but this is what, $5,000 a month?
yeah,
Or more? I mean, we need that for us. So is it better to buy a long-term care policy or a life insurance policy that will replace ultimately the monies that are outlaid for your parents, your in-laws? And as one of my clients who said, we're going to sell fun. And I said, terrific. And he goes, you're not going to push back on me? I said, no. Hopefully you've had a good conversation with your wife and she agrees. I said, now here's what I'm going to share with you. Have you thought about your kids? What happens if they can't pay their mortgage? What happens if there's an issue? I said, who are they going to call? And it was like this epiphany. He said, they're going to call us. He says, actually, Mitchell, I love that idea. Because he goes, whose retirement are we protecting?
Right.
Ours.
So I think we beat this horse pretty good. So
yeah, I love it though. Yeah,
so
I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah,
so passionate about
I know. That's
Helping.
what we all do. What we do.
Yeah.
I just want to kind of go back and kind of talk a bit more about the mechanics of long-term care insurance. I know you talked about activities of daily living, or what we call ADLs. And can you talk about like an elimination period, or how people go
Sure.
to file a claim, and just sort of the nuts and bolts of
Well, this
the
is
process.
kind of like the presidential debates. You ask a question, I go off over here. Okay.
No comment.
But so the nuts and bolts of a claim are what we alluded to. First, calling the company and understanding that you need some help. Okay. Then there's an elimination period, which is It can be 30 days, it can be 60 days, it can be 90 days. All right. And so it's getting through that elimination period. What we are huge proponents of is get yourself on claim as quickly as possible. Because if you have a 90-day elimination period and you say, oh, we're going to wait. All right. And here's the reality. You can call Brightstar and book a caregiver, probably, Susan, for what, as little as 2 hours. It might be more expensive.
Yeah.
All right. And maybe, or 4 hours. Say, look, we can bring someone in for 4 hours that, I'm just going to throw a number out there, cost $200 for 4 hours, okay, of an aid or whatever, okay, versus use that smallest amount of time to get through your elimination period, as opposed to, well, let's wait until dad needs more help.
Oh, God. I say this all the time.
And now you're looking at calling Brightstar and saying, we need 8 hours, or we need 12 hours, or we can't leave dad alone. And now you're going through that 90-day elimination period, spending, Bruce, as you said, $600 or $700 a day instead of $200 a day.
I try to explain that a lot to people in various ways, and there's a roadblock. I mean, and I'll say it just as you did. I'll give them some mathematical question. Would you rather spend $100 a day for 90 days, or would you rather spend $500 a day for 90 days? But there's always that, well, we're going to wait till we need more, but you still have to pay for this. So if you get your hip done and you need a little care in the home, I encourage you to get some care in the home now while it's minimal, versus waiting till you have a big fall or a stroke or something and you need real bulk amount of care, or you're moving to a community, and you're paying more to get through that 90-day period. Pay less.
So I just want to
Absolutely.
clarify, because for our listeners who may not know a lot about insurance, an elimination period is sort of like a deductible period.
Correct.
So there's a period of time that's stated in a policy that says you need to pay out of pocket for X number of days in order for the full benefit to kick in.
Correct. For any benefit to kick in.
Any benefit.
And I think it's I get the question a lot too, though. Well, it's 90 days. Okay, well, is that 90 care days, or is that 90 consecutive days?
Good question.
And it varies, if I'm correct.
It varies by the policy language. For example, there's one company that 1 day equals 7. If I get care 1 day during a week, it counts as 7 toward the 90 days. So then someone can basically in 11 weeks be on and have 11 days of service and meet their elimination period. There are other policies and companies that have designs where you need 90 individual days of care. They can be consecutive, they can be spread out, but you need a full elimination period to begin accessing your benefit.
And is it true that once somebody goes on claim that their premiums stop?
Generally, yes. If you have a life policy, all right, with a chronic care rider or an LTC rider, you will still pay those premiums for your life policy.
LTC rider meaning long-term care rider, just so.
Yeah. So that if you've got a life policy with a spend down option for care, you're going to still need to pay those premiums on the life insurance. But here's what I'm going to tell you. Let's say your life insurance policy is giving you $10,000 a month, and your life insurance premium is $12,000 a year. Well, okay. Not to me, it's a pretty easy check to write. All right. And if you spend through your entire death benefit, well, then you drop the policy. There's no reason to keep it.
Right.
Okay.
Wow. What tips or advice do you have, for our listeners that can help them, get the best value or the best bang for their buck out of their policies? For example, I think one thing that we see is when people have the policy, they think that either it covers just home care or just if they're in a senior community, But are there instances where they can maximize that? If they're in a community that they can have some additional help, or
policies, even that were written 20 years ago, will generally pay for home care, adult daycare, assisted living, or skilled care. It may not spell that out in some of these older policies that were written in the early 2000s or late 1990s, but what they will say is appropriate mode of care. Like assisted living 25 years ago
Didn't exist.
okay, it was like you either at home or in the nursing home. And now not many people go to nursing homes. They may go to a independent living, which they're, by the way, just so you know, your policy will not pay any stipend or rent to be an independent living in a senior community. But what they will do is they will pay for care to either come into your independent living apartment, or if you're in a community that offers assisted, a section of the building is assisted living. And let's say there's a couple. So one may choose to stay in their independent living unit. The other may need to go to assisted living. That policy would pay for the assisted living. All right.
So I get this question often, and people have been paying on a long-term care policy for years and years and years. And then they move into a buy-in community where care is included. And people say, well, Bruce, should I cancel my policy? So you want to comment on that?
Never. Keep your policy.
Keep your policy.
Keep your, I don't care what it's, I don't care what the community says, because the community people are at heart, they're salespeople. All right. They're marketing executives. Okay. Their goal and desire is to have you say, yes, I love this community. Here's your check. Here's my signed lease. Okay. They may not fully grasp, candidly, either the true cost of care or how long someone may need care. They certainly don't know when you're going to need care any more than I know if or when I'll need care. There are days I wake up now, I think I need care. Okay.
same.
All right. So, and I'm glad I have a policy, and I bought it when I was 42.
Oh, okay.
All right.
I'm 42.
But there's
So-
times where people move into a buying community, and even though care is included, they can still go on claim, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because the other thing is, I have a client right now who their community advised them to jettison their coverage. And they said, we can afford to keep paying the premiums. We could afford to move in here. And thankfully, they kept their policy, because that policy is paying them almost $19,000 a month toward their care, which is running upwards. Last month, it was almost $24,000. The other thing is, this policy and many policies have medical equipment monies available equal to 1 month or 2 months. This individual just bought a brand new $5,400 electric scooter, and the insurance company paid for 100% of it. Okay. They've bought 2 or 3 different assistive devices. The insurance company paid for all of that on top of their monthly care.
So I know a lot of times couples move into a buy-in community where care is included, and couples want to stay together. They've been married for 50, 60 years together, and they want to stay together as long as possible. And a lot of people don't realize that, someone's first line of defense probably would be to hire some care to come in their apartment so they can stay together and be in an independent apartment. And through this long-term care insurance, that would help pay for that care coming into someone's independent apartment so people don't have to be separated. Correct?
Yeah, although I'll tell you my experience is, by the time you've been married 50 or 60 years, let me tell you, you were ready to live apart by the time you hit year 25. Okay. But it's We're staying together for the sake of the grandchildren. It's not any longer we're staying together for the kids. We're staying together for the grandchildren. I say that tongue in cheek. No, but you're absolutely
I
right.
think Gina would have something to say to that about that. So,
Remarkable.
so it's interesting because our last episode we had Marla talking about being a professional organizer, and the question came up, or the topic came up, about people thinking they can do it themselves. And I'm sure you run into this in your business as well, is that people think they can make their own claim and do it themselves. And so what would be your advice to someone like that?
Right, most of us watch television. Most of us have seen a car ad, and the car is always speeding around a corner or driving fast down a street. And if you look at the fine print on the TV ad, it says, "Closed course, professional driver, do not attempt this on your own." And my answer is, don't attempt to provide your own care. Don't attempt to look for your own senior housing on your own. Do not attempt to file an insurance claim on your own. At least get some guidance. All right. And I do that all the time. People will call me, "Mitchell, how do I do this?" Great. This is what I charge per hour. I'll happily help you. In fact, I want you to do this paperwork on your own. Okay. But let me guide you through the process. All right.
And if someone does it on their own, what's the danger of doing that? Danger might be too big a word, but I'm just what's the risk?
The risk is they spend all this time they're unsuccessful in getting approved for claim. And I'll share this. Until recently, I had 100% success rate getting people on claim. I recently had a client that was denied claim. And it was clear to me. Now, I have no control over the interviewer that came to the home, and I don't know what they wrote in their care notes or whatever. But what was unfortunate is the couple chose to appeal this on their own.
Mm.
And I said, look, you've already made an investment in my time. Okay. I'm glad that you appealed this, but you probably should have called me, because I can already sense that they're not going to be successful. Because I said, "Well, did you get the appeal paperwork?" "Well, what do you mean?" My husband wrote a letter and I wrote a letter, and we mailed it to the company that we disagreed with their decision. I said, "There's a form that you're going to want to submit. There's an appeals process form. And ultimately, the company's probably going to write to you and say, 'Thank you for your letter of such and such, but this is the paperwork you need to fill out.'"
Or you're denied.
Yeah. No.
And again, we're losing valuable days of elimination period. And yes, look, there is a cost. But there's also an emotional upheaval cost. And no one wants to see their loved one fall and get hurt. And at the same time, the healthier spouse or kids want to maintain some semblance of a life. And one of the things that people tend to forget is, "Oh, well, we have this money coming in, we can pay for care." Wait, you still have if you're in a gated community, you still have your association fees, you still have, you may be traveling a little bit less, but you're still going to have the cost of living.
Correct.
On top of the cost of care. And that's something people tend to forget. Those expenses don't go away.
So for our listeners, and some may have long-term care insurance, some might be thinking, I better look into this. How can someone reach out to you?
Bruce, to your question of how can folks reach me? They can reach me by calling. First, they can go to our website, LTCiMarketplace.com. Second, there's a portion on the website where they can fill out an inquiry, and we'll get that. They can also feel free to call me at 239-461-5511. Again, that number is 239-461-5511. I also will say, if you're going to our website, please take a look at our video. I promise you it will make you smile or just plain laugh out loud.
Great.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for being here with us today. You're fantastic. We've known you for a long time. I think, like you said at the beginning, there's no insurance guy like you. You're very different, very down to earth, and I love that. Just like us, it's why I said earlier you could really be our third co-host. I know you're passionate. I know you care about your clients, and that's really, I think, what is the most important.
Yeah. I mean, as one of my clients shared with me, because Mitchell, and this is a fairly wealthy individual. Here's what I love. I ask you a question, you actually answer it.
Yeah.
You're telling me I'm being foolish, and I won't just use that word of foolish. I'll
Color it up.
It's a little more colorful than that. And he goes, but it's like, I like. He says, what happens is when people learn that you have money, they talk to you differently. Yeah. They tell you what they think you want to hear. And whereas with you, I can ask you a question and you'll answer it directly.
These are tough conversations. They're thinking about aging, thinking about making a plan, thinking about insurance, or, downsizing your home, or moving to a community, or bringing in help. These are all tough conversations, and they're necessary, but they're tough. And I think that it's important to have professionals like you, someone that can help them and give them good, honest information, but to have people that really care and that are going to tell them the truth and guide them. Because I think at the end of the day, we all care about the same thing, which is helping people have a good quality plan that embraces how they want, to age or spend their golden years. And it's refreshing to have someone in the insurance industry have that passion and really be honest.
And I just want to add that, I saw a great photo and a profile of you, and the profiles of distinction with you, with your fedora and your dog Bernie. And such a great, that's so you.
Well, thanks. Yeah, he's our corporate mascot. He won't answer the phone though. I've been trying to train him.
You got to get a parrot for that. I keep saying I'm going to get a parrot at work to answer the phone. But yeah, no, I do love the profiles photo. I think it's adorable. I'm sorry, you probably hate that word. But I think it is adorable, you and your dog. Although, I mean, I'll let you pass this year, but next year I'm sneaking my dogs in too.
Good.
Everyone should have their dog.
Everyone should have their dog.
You're bringing your dogs in next year too.
Bring my dogs.
So next year we'll make it Profiles of Distinction Dog Edition. Thanks, Brenda.
That's great.
Thanks, Mitchell. Thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you, guys.
When experience matters the most, Senior Housing Solutions uses over 30 years of industry knowledge to provide expert advice for those considering a move to a senior living community. We are the matchmakers of senior housing. Call today at 239-595-0207 for your free consultation.
All right, welcome to Checkmate, our final segment here for today. So as we wrap up the episode, thinking about the conversation with Mitchell and unpacking long-term care insurance, what do you think is the top takeaway that our listeners should have?
Well, that was a lot of great information, and we could have talked with Mitchell for hours and days. So great information. I obviously, dealing with pre-planning and planning ahead, and the importance of planning ahead. That just resonated with me big time. And I would also say, leave it up to the professionals. Let the professionals do what they're supposed to do. Don't go down that rabbit hole of trying to do it yourself. It just, you may not get the result you want. So I definitely picked up on that.
Yeah, that was pretty impactful. I think he was amazing. So
yeah. So Susan, what's going on in the community?
Well, we've got Labor Day coming up next Monday. So, most people have a long weekend. There's tons of events all over the community, all over Southwest Florida. So be sure to check those out on every local website has stuff posted. But really what I'm looking forward to really the most is just to have a little bit of a long weekend, maybe kind of unpack a lot of the stuff we've talked about in our episodes and kind of think about how to apply that to my own life.
Well, sounds great. I think about all these things all the time, and so I think hopefully our listeners are gathering this information. I know our next season's going to be jam packed with some
Oh,
great speakers and great guests. So I know we're working very hard on that behind the scenes.
yeah, definitely. Hard to believe, but next week will be our 10th and final episode of season 1. We have a great episode. We're calling it Looking into the Crystal Ball, which is really just going to be a highlight or, looking back at the previous 9 episodes, taking our key takeaways and helping you really start that outline to create that perfect aging strategy.
Looking forward to it.
Yep. I'll see you next week.
Be sure to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media. You can also find more information and resources at www.theaginggamepodcast.com.